All right, welcome to Roleplay Cafe. It's Del here. It's Developer Diary 3 for me, in part response to Jason's video he put up recently, which is on the heels of his and Anthony's discussion, which you recommend people watching. I think Jason and myself have both had enough time through the development, and to see it after the fact and play from both sides of the table, that we may have had certain things, our expectations may have fallen short in certain regards. I think we both admitted that certain things that we allowed to stay in the game, uh, just because it functioned as more of a foundation for players to understand that they were playing a role-playing game and to feel at home with certain things that we may have not have allowed to go into the game in the first place, were allowed because of that reason. You know, we had to kind of yield to the traditional construct or outlines of a role-playing game that we may have not have otherwise, right? So now we're attempting to change that, but also our perceptions that may have fallen short, or realization through multiple plays, that we need to change or tweak, right? So now Jason's obviously expressed his personal feelings and reactions to what he thought the player side of the table was going to be in Dark and Jermaine, falling short somewhat, as he wanted to stay in character as character, and felt himself wanting to take more authorship, or compulsion to, or realizing that we, in the game, it's a natural thing for people to be able to do that, even suggested to where they can have more authorship. Now, I responded a little bit differently. I had a different experience of that. I'll go ahead and say that to me, that was one of the joys, and I think really highlighted what the game was capable of, and I think it's a necessary component of the game. I explain that. I don't necessarily see it as writer's room, and that's the way we referred to it at the time. Like, we didn't want the writer's room, but we wanted in character as character, and then more agency for the character, because they were creating the game with the presenter. The presenter was representing the world, the diegesis, as I would say. In response to the characters, back and forth, there was the player characters were responsible and had agency over their own self in the world, could reach out and affect it, and the world would push back. Call it the pushback, right? The presenter was representing the world. Just go back and forth, totally naive of what was going on, and would roll and find out how the world was working, would conceive of what was happening. Now, this handshake that I'm talking about, and why I think it's necessary, is when the presenter is informed by the seeds that are dropping in front of them, and making natural, logical inclusions of the scene that's already presented, and then what the seed would inject into it, and it would be, like I've said, connecting dots. You go, oh, and you have this epiphanies and realizations at the presenter of what's occurring. You go, oh, I didn't see this coming. This came from left field. And you can almost, just like, you're not conceiving of it yourself, but it's like just being supplied to you. So you lay it out in front of them. Now, as a player, I never felt like I was stepping out to look at my character to say, oh, if this character interacts in this way, this would So I wasn't moving them like a doll or handling them from like Zeus moving Perseus around. It was nothing like that. I was going from the character's perspective. I was listening to what was occurring in the world by the presenter, the other characters interacting as such. I felt like the game, I didn't feel like it. I realized in real time through play that I had liberation as a player character, that I could express not only what my character was doing, saying, thinking, feeling, but also observing. I had the ability to describe my character, be it whether he was Savicurus, a very stoic character that didn't talk as much, but I was able to express through descriptive dialogue what my character was doing and seeing, whether it was the poor woman pushing the cart in that was very safely assumed by me. I didn't feel like I needed to ask if I could just express that. It was just part of what I was. He was reconnoitering the scene. He was, like a bodyguard walking into an area, and what am I seeing here? I didn't need I didn't need to ask to say, what am I seeing here? It was just me, naturally, from the scene or from the area that I was walking into, could incidentally populate different things that I was seeing, which still was hand in hand with me making very safe assumptions that if I'm on the deck of a ship, I can grab a rope or an oar, or if I'm in the kitchen, I can grab a kitchen knife or whatever. Those safe assumptions, which I've referred to as like within arm's reach, right? Maybe you say that they bleed out a little bit. I just invented or authored this woman, right? I think that's really, that's the word author is dangerous to me because it has connotations that may automatically shift it into a writer's room thing. Like I'm doing it from the position or the point of view of an author that's doing it because he's moving a doll around. No. This authorship was from the point of view of witness as the character in character. So I think the definition is a little bit, it needs to be a different definition. Authorship carries that weight of writers that writer room previously carried, right? So to me, there's a little bit different. If I was neutered as a player character in character as character, to say that I could not go beyond the bounds, or I couldn't say that an old woman was pushing the cart, I would constantly have to catch myself in game. I wouldn't have that liberation of expressing what my character was witnessing in the immediacy. I think, and I've experienced at conventions and during play, that people don't necessarily step outside the bounds of their autonomy or their what they're accountable for in game. I'm accountable for representing my character, but the liberation that you see and the joy of people playing and interacting with this world that's put in front of them by the presenter and the pushback that they have, that if they can't utilize their imaginative space and what they're seeing to be able to report that or express that through dialogue, and I've never seen to where they're not in a mindset to where they want to leverage or min-max narratively by going to a point to where they inject something just for the sake of, oh, would this be beneficial for my character? Because they're in the character's mindset. They're taking in what's happening. And any time that they go beyond immediately what's in there like that, like the old woman pushing the cart, that's just incidental witness. Okay, so to me, it's more of a witness than authorship. And then, like Jason in that situation, took the old woman, he had just rolled witch and said, "This is perfect." He's witnessing this. He's seeing this, right? Not from the vantage point of trying to to leverage, but just an honest insight of the mindset and the view of the character in effect. And that bleed, that handshake, is what I think is a natural extension of in character as character play that that overlaps into the presenter's area, and there can be, like I said, that handshake of when Jason says, "You see an old woman? I just rolled a witch. This works." So that connotation of authorship that seems to be misleading into the writer's own perspective, or doing it with intent to be cool, or what would this character, like you're divorced from the character's mindset to say what would they do, is egregiously misleading. I think there needs to be another definition of when you witness something in the character's mind space that you can express outwardly. I do know that that comes with cautionary aspects. Through my time in play, there was one time when I was playing with in Ivan's game. I was playing Thane, which is a bit of a thief, a rascal. And I didn't do this consciously, but subconsciously, when I mentioned about the night being bright. And we were going on a thieving expedition, right? Which is, with that situation, it was critical of where, like I said, I've said before, and I wasn't too, when we were making Dark Age of Man, I wasn't too open about, I wasn't worried about the fact that if somebody would overstep those bounds through purposeful or unknowing means. Like there was one point when Derek was playing with us, and he was around that, but he said the Viking walked up to me and asked this. Now that was like stepping over the line, because he was deciding that the Viking did that, right? He felt that was the first time I ever witnessed anyone going that far, and that was overstepping into the purview of the presenter's realm of authority and jurisdiction. Shouldn't have did that. We roll with it, but like I said at the time, it doesn't break anything, because anything you can and say can be held against you in a court of law. So he just introduced that dialogue. At the time, me hearing that, I didn't initially throw it into the game as like, this is bread and butter and part and parcel of what the game and the mechanism to keep this game running. It was an aberration. It was, he went there, doesn't break it, so we don't want to restrain him. I wouldn't think most people would do this, And to go back with what I did with Ivan's game, whenever I said, it's a bright mood, I was trying to eliminate something. I could have worked to my, against me, obviously, that they would have seen the thief that were trying to get away with something, yet I was trying to see something. You know what I mean? So it would change the environmental change. So Ivan had to pull back. But subconsciously, I was in that thieving mindset that I was trying to do something meta for the character. But I would not have did that knowingly otherwise, right? If I was playing a different character, it wouldn't have been that mindset. I just thought that was a little bit crazy. But in general, the witness perspective has to be, to me, has to be an extension, a natural extension of in character as character, that you can express that. Otherwise, it's not going to be a full expression of in character as character if you can't allude to or remark upon this, safe assumptions within your environment that you're interacting with. Now, putting boundaries up may be what is necessary, but I think these boundaries are part of the unspoken social contract and are naturally kind of, people yield. They're not like, don't be a butthole, like we said, that the trifecta of gaming. But the Trinity, they'll say, don't do this. So everybody has a natural thing to where you kind of sit back and wait and yield. Like, you first through the door. You don't want to do that. Now you could be playing a character that's against that and has to be checked, or you could be a boisterous personality. But who are you sitting with at the table? It's usually people that you know each other and work off each other. It's part of the social dynamic. So you get that live in-person social dynamic at the table, group of friends or group of strangers meeting each other, but even socially that you have to yield to one another and be respectful of a certain degree, and that transcends into in game too. And like the whole process of Dark Age of Man, we don't have initiative. That's to keep it live and organic and roll and keep everybody in the headspace of what's occurring in the mind's eye of the table as a whole, as a group, even though everybody may be seeing things a little bit differently, if they're seeing anything at all. But, processing things a little bit differently, but everybody's playing off of one another, and it's got a role. Minimalist system, the less moving parts, less potential for breakdown. I think communication can be problematic at times if you've got somebody trying to leverage narrative situations, or you've got multiple people trying to approach different things to see if they can gain leverage narratively, or you can do this mechanically. If a boy failed to lift something, you go to the next person and try to lift it. In Dark Age of Man, we know that if a guy with a 3 body can't lift it, the other 2 is a moot point. There's other techniques you can use, like the timer's running, which we do in Dark Age of Man because everything's organic and it has a role, right? You don't want to stymie down with one person arguing his point. And okay, we'll try again. Well, finally the guy gets fed up with you and kicks you out or whatever. Or we'll have prestige to kind of monitor that too. If you got enough prestige, it's kind of an automatic, or you may need a roll to see if you can affect the world in that way, the same way you might affect something physically with your body. All of these kind of help to keep fluidity in the game flowing. Conversationally, mechanically, and when we're hitting an understanding, an agreed upon understanding of boundaries and borders, and respecting those, whether it's character to character, and respecting the agency and the imagination and the narrative liberation of each character. You don't want to step on toes. You don't want to automatically assume that the other character is already there when he isn't, or that the presenter, you don't want to go past that. But the game's flexible enough to where it still doesn't break. There may be times when somebody oversteps a little bounds or whatever like that, but it works very seamlessly in most respects. Those little oversights, oversteps, are few and far between. In fact, they more so occur in games that have more stringent rules and guidelines and fences and everything, trying to keep people herded. Because when you're doing that and you're on some kind of, in my estimation, a procedural path that is built in games mechanically to keep people from going out of the lines, then you have more people that are trying to min-max or break or game the game, and that becomes the game to them, than they are invested and involved in what's actually occurring with their fellow party members and with the world that is presented by the presenter. They've then detached themselves and begin to game the game. So it isn't an environment conducive of people that are experiencing the game with one another and play live fluidly enough. It's almost like you build walls, you build gutters, you build fences. That becomes what players at the table, when they're waiting on their turn or when they're doing this, or when they're trying to build their character sheet to become more advantageous, to break the game or see if the challenge becomes what they can do mechanically, in competition to what the game is laid out by the GM, that they want to hurdle, and they feel an accomplishment from doing that. Oh, I beat the game. It's not about the experience of being in the immediacy of the moment with your fellows, right? So taking down those borders and those corrals and those putting it in the player's hands, and players, I mean, presenter, player, characters, everybody around the table, then all of a sudden everybody, it gets on a deeper level of real, and everybody has to be accountable for each other. Yeah, you're not enabling or disenabling players anymore. You're giving them responsibility, autonomy to where the game and ultimately the result of the game is the responsibility of everybody across the table. And it's something where you will everybody will naturally raise up to meet those expectations seriously across the table for everyone else to the degree that the table wants it to achieve. And everybody becomes responsible. And then they have the mindset to be there in the game and see something happen. Not feel like they are, okay, what is this game you're putting in front of me? Why do I feel invested? I'm not really invested. The investment I get is trying to game the game or being here in the immediacy. That's the extreme example about that. So it becomes you got to jump those. You're more interested in jumping those hurdles or gaming the game than you are invested in what is occurring. And that's what we try to do in Dark Ages, is drop all that stuff down. I think it would behoove us to do the same in Space Age of Man. The technology